Hi, and welcome back to Whitetail Acres Farm. Well, Happy New Year, everybody. I can't believe it's the end of the year already. I have no idea where 2025 went. But it's been a very busy year, which is probably why it seems like it went by really fast. We've had a lot of really great successes, and I'm excited to share those successes with you and what goals we had, why we had them, and our journey to achieving them. And then we will also share with you some of those areas of opportunities where we've tried something, realized it didn't work quite the way that we had hoped and expected, but that's not going to deter us. We're going to make some modifications and plans to do better this coming year. The first success of the year was having our first baby calves born. We were so excited when that happened. That was earlier in spring this year. Now, we have been raising cattle for a few years now, but just this year actually had some calves born on our property. In the beginning, we would purchase young steers and then raise them and grow them out until they were big enough and old enough to get butchered. And then we would always, as we would butcher the cattle, we would always buy replacements. Buying cattle was helpful, but not sustainable. Cattle prices continue to go up, and having constantly the need to buy new cattle really adds up. With that in mind, we decided to buy a few females that we would be able to keep on the farm for breeding. Last year, we rented a bull for a couple of months, which was a much better experience than we had expected. And the bull was successful too, well, for two of our three females, as they had calves early this spring. We had been watching all three females very closely around the time that we had calculated that they would calve, and were so excited when we started noticing signs that they were getting close. The first mama had a bull calf during the night in March, which was such a fun surprise. We went out in the morning to do our normal chores, and then there was a baby calf there waiting for us. We were overjoyed. About 3 weeks later, we noticed that one of the other females were showing signs of getting really close too. So we were keeping a really good eye on her. Well, that afternoon, I think it might have even been late morning, we went back out to the barn to do another check on her because we were trying to do multiple checks throughout the day. And we had found that she had just finished birthing. She was just finishing cleaning the baby off, and the baby was already starting to stand, and we were so excited. Thankfully, both experiences, both birthings were very easy and did not need our assistance, and so they were very successful. And this really encouraged us that, you know what, this is a path we need to stay on, and we need to continue breeding and having more babies born on our property. So that was a big win for us, a first really big win for the new year for us. Next big win of the year was being able to get a permanent chicken coop here on our property so we can expand our egg-laying hens. The last few years we were raising our hens in a barn stall that we closed off in our livestock barn. It worked really well, and we loved the convenience of the hens being in the livestock barn because it made the farm chores so easy when all of the animals were together in the same place. But the stall in the barn limited us in the number of hens that we could raise at one time. We knew we ultimately needed a permanent coop on our property that allowed for more birds. We explored many different options between building our own coop and having a coop, a pre-made coop delivered to us. Building a coop from scratch seemed like a more economical idea, but it would be very time consuming. So we were unsure about how much time we were willing to spend on that endeavor. When we looked at buying a pre-made chicken coop, it seemed like a more efficient option because it would save us on time. But then we just took a step back and admitted it would be incredibly convenient, but we agreed it just wasn't wise, at this time to go that route, given, all of our other farm goals and projects. We needed to find a middle ground somewhere, and we had heard of people turning outdoor sheds into other things, aside from just storing tools. So we picked up on that idea and we started thinking through how we could make a shed work as a coop. We found a local shed company right in town here, and they have gorgeous sheds and they can do some modifications to them. So we went in to talk to them, and the next thing we knew, we were leaving there having ordered a customized garden shed. Now, this wasn't anything super fancy like, we were looking at with the other pre-made coops. This was just a standard garden shed, but we were able to customize the outside of it so that way it would complement our existing house. So that part was exciting. We were also able to work with them to have them do some spray foam insulation on the inside of the coop for us. So that was already done and we didn't have to worry about it. And we were able to get the windows placed where we wanted them. We wanted 2 windows on either side of the coop, and we wanted to make sure there was enough space in between the windows so that way we can eventually put our own roofs in there. And then we were also able to get the French doors that we wanted. Once the shed was delivered, we finished the interior walls, we painted the inside, and then we put a nice vinyl flooring down. We also installed the roofs and the nest boxes, and we also took an extra measure and we installed some metal mesh inside the coop, where the windows are, and then also created a wire mesh wall on the inside of the coop right by the French doors. We put the wire mesh up as an extra measure of protection for the birds. So that way, whenever we have the windows up or we have the coop doors open, we didn't have to worry about the girls escaping, but more importantly, predators being able to get in. And we were so excited to have accomplished this goal of having a permanent coop. And we bought 50 new chicks right away to be able to call the new coop home. The next big accomplishment we had here on the farm was raising turkeys. Now, we've raised a lot of meat birds over the years. We've raised them from baby chicks up into butchering, and we felt very confident, in our abilities to raise them, care for them, and harvest them. So we thought about the idea of being able to raise our own turkey for Thanksgiving. And then that got us down the path of deciding, okay, let's raise some turkeys this year. So we did a lot of research beforehand because this was something new, and we heard from a lot of people that turkeys are a lot different than chickens in the sense that they're a lot more sensitive, and in the beginning days especially, there's a very high chance of loss. So we actually got 5 turkeys. We figured if there is some loss, at least we can have 1 or 2 that we would be able to have for us for Thanksgiving, and then maybe New Year's or whenever else we would want it for during the year. And instead of putting them right into the brooder room like we normally would with our chickens, we were overly cautious and we decided to make a makeshift little brooder area right in our garage, and that way we would be able to go out there very often throughout the day and check on them in those beginning days. And to our surprise, after just a few weeks, they were all thriving. We had 0 loss. We were thrilled when we were finally able to get to the point of feeling comfortable to move them over into the brooder room in our livestock barn. And they stayed there for a few more weeks until they were all feathered out and they were old enough and mature enough to be able to put out on pasture in our chicken tractors. It was a really good, enjoyable experience for us too, and we loved watching them grow. It's really a completely different experience than raising meat birds. They're so much calmer, they're really curious creatures, and they're just almost majestic looking. I really get a kick out of watching them puff out their feathers and spread their tails, and the noises that they make just make me smile every time. It was such a cool experience raising them. The only thing that we would do differently next time is not grow them out as long. Our 5 birds ended up averaging anywhere from 20 to 32 pounds, which is massive. So I think this coming year in 2026, we're absolutely going to get turkeys again. We might get a few more because it was such a great, easy experience. And we're going to make sure that we time it differently so that way they don't get quite as big and they're a little closer to that typical turkey size. And now the next successful, this I should have made as number 1. This was the most exciting event and accomplishment that we had in 2025. And that was being able to acquire all the equipment to cut and bale our own hay. A little more than half, I would say, of our 50-acre farm is dedicated to growing hay. And we love the idea of having our own hay because we don't use pesticides or chemicals or anything on it. We try to keep it very natural and healthy. But in the past, we never had the equipment that we needed, and so we always had to outsource. So acquiring the equipment needed and being able to be self-sufficient in this area as well was one of our top goals. And it had been for a while, but it really made it evident this year that we had to really make a push for it. And here in the northeastern United States and in Pennsylvania, specifically where we're located, earlier in 2025, I would say, late spring, the early summer, it was wet. It rained so much, and there were very small opportunities to be able to cut and bale. Having it to outsource this job really put us at a disadvantage. And it's understandable that when you're having somebody else, cut and bale for you, and they have property of their own that they need to also cut and bale, when you have those little small windows of time, of course, they're going to naturally want to do theirs first. But seeing those little times of those windows of opportunity come and go, it really made us realize that we need to be able to do this ourselves. Thankfully, by the end of the summer, we were able to start acquiring all of the equipment that we needed. And this really energized us and got us excited. So we started out the summer by acquiring a tedder and then a rake. And then later on in the summer, maybe early fall, we were able to finally buy a baler and then ultimately the much needed disc mower. We were overjoyed and felt so blessed and empowered that we were finally able to achieve this ultimate goal of having all of our own equipment. Though it was late in the season and there wasn't a ton of grass in the fields to cut and bale, we just couldn't resist to cut what was there. There was absolutely no way that we were going to be able to wait until the next growing season to try out all of this new equipment. I can't even explain how good it felt to see the very first bale rolling off of that baler. That realization that we can actually do this whole process ourselves was just intoxicating. We even purchased a much larger tractor to be able to move the equipment around and more easily handle everything, which was also a monumentous moment for us. And it was so much fun watching a huge tractor trailer pulling onto our farm and delivering that tractor for us. We completed soil tests already, and we spread natural fertilizers down, so now we just need to pray for favorable weather this coming year, and we'll be ready to rock with cutting and baling. And the next achievement was buying a bull. Now, we've had a positive experience with renting a bull in the past, and like I shared, we were able to successfully get 2 baby calves born on our property this year, which really excited us. So we knew we wanted to be able to own our own bull. We have been raising Angus cattle, but have been wanting to move towards Herefords instead. Now, while Angus certainly are more widely recognized and produce larger amounts of meat, Herefords have been more appealing. They're known to be able to have a more calm demeanor and much easier to handle than Angus. So even though we had prior opportunities throughout the year to purchase an Angus bull, we held firm on wanting to find a Hereford bull. And that way we would be able to find one that's young enough that we would be able to keep him for years to come on our property and help us expand our herd. This became a reality this fall when we were able to find a local farmer that was selling a young Hereford bull. We went out to the property so we can meet the farmer and we can take a look at the bull, and we felt good about the purchase, and the bull is so cute. Now, I know cuteness is not a factor, but for me, I like seeing cute animals running around. So this bull, he was very friendly, had a good temperament, a little on the shy side, but we'll work on that with him. And I just love the coloring he has and, the little fuzzy face that he has too. So I think he's going to be a really good addition. We are already enjoying having this new bull and are so excited to check that box on this goal as well. Finally owning our own bull for future expansion of the herd and for a lot more adorable calves to be born in the future is definitely another success for the year. And now this leads us into another success that we had, and that was our goal of expanding our herd. Now, in the past, we would always raise a couple steers and, when they would have to go to the butcher, we would then buy replacements. And this just was not economical. It made sense for us at the time, but we realized what would make the most sense, especially now that we had a couple calves born and we're getting very comfortable with the idea of expanding and now have a bull. We wanted to be able to naturally expand our herd. So knowing that we wanted to make that transition into Herefords, we were looking for the Hereford females that we can purchase. And then we further narrowed down our search by looking for young Hereford heifers. And we wanted them right after they had just finished weaning, so they were still very young, and there were benefits to that. So that way we would be able to not only get them when they're younger, so we can start handling them early on and get them familiar and comfortable with us, which would, in the long run, be able to have them more comfortable being around us once they have babies. We were fortunate to find someone that had not one, but 3 Hereford heifers for sale. We went to see them before making the purchase and felt good about the family we bought them from, and we're happy to see that they were friendly and healthy. And although 2 of the 3 are on the shy side, we were excited to have them arrive on our farm. And it's been a wonderful experience so far. And they're slowly warming up to us as we work on building that level of trust with them by, going out there daily and petting them and giving them attention, and then of course feeding them some treats. It's going to be so much fun watching them as they grow up here on our homestead. Since they're only about 7 months old, we have to keep them separated right now from the rest of the herd. Being that we have a bull on our property now, we can't risk the young females getting bred just yet. So for the remainder of the winter and into the early part of spring, we'll keep them in separate pastures, but by summer we will be able to mix them and be able to unite the entire herd. So while we did have a lot of really great successes this past year, and there were a lot of things that we are excited about and we were able to achieve, it wasn't exactly all, excitement and high fives all year. There were some things that we had worked on and worked hard at, but didn't quite work out the way we had expected. And I wouldn't really say that they're failures, but there's certainly things that gave us a little bit of disappointment and we learned from and will be, improving upon this coming year. So I'd say the first is the garden. So the garden, if you recall, we planted this really big garden. It was going to be our epic garden. I put a lot of time and thought and planning into it. We grew everything pretty much from seed. It took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears getting this together. And since we are mostly surrounded by woods and deer come on our property quite a bit, we knew we had to protect this nice big garden from the deer. So we took some precautions and we actually made these really tall posts all around the garden, and we found what was supposed to be deer netting for gardens that was, I want to say, 7 feet high. And we purchased that and we stapled that to all of the posts all around the garden, and it was supposed to be high enough that it would deter the deer and the deer wouldn't be able to get into the garden. So we went ahead and did that, and it worked for a little bit, but the deer ultimately made their way into the garden. They figured out how to, try to jump over the netting, and then they ended up tearing the netting down. It was not what I had expected. We felt confident in the deer netting, and that's what we decided to go with, but we have to do something different in 2026 here. The next thing that we were a little bit disappointed about was our orchard. Now, the orchard is fairly big. We have quite a bit planted in there. We put a lot of thought into it. We wanted a nice variety of different kinds of fruits, like your apples and pears, cherries, blackberries and raspberries, and we have a couple different nut trees in there too, some grapes. There's a nice variety, and we were so excited to get the orchard in place. So we did get it all in place, and again, we knew the deer were going to be an issue. And we weren't so sure about being able to use the deer netting around the whole orchard too. So we got this great idea. So we went out and we got this whole roll of this metal fencing stuff that we wanted to use, and we made all of our cages by hand, and we put around all of the plants and bushes and trees in the orchard, uh, but the deer still got to it. And again, one of our subscribers had voiced a concern to us about that, but we figured, this had to have worked. We were so sure about it, but it didn't quite work. So the deer still got in there. They were able to pull the cages off of the trees and the bushes. They knocked them over, and we ended up with some loss at the end of it. So the orchard, it takes years for some of these trees to grow. So we really need to put some solid thought into it this year, and maybe even put a permanent fence around it. So we have to go to the drawing board a little bit, but we did learn from it, and we are going to improve on it because we really do want the orchard to be a success. And then along the same theme here of the growing our produce, we had wanted to grow all of our own sweet corn this year. So we ended up finding this great spot on our property that we could plant a nice patch of sweet corn and be far enough away from the rest of the garden. And we figured it would be a nice safe spot where the deer wouldn't get to it. So the deer did get to some of it, but that wasn't the biggest problem. It just didn't grow the way we had expected, and that could have been a soil issue. So we did not test the soil before planting. We had used a lot of natural compost. We make our own compost piles here on the property, so we thought that would have enough of the components in it to be able to allow the corn to thrive, but it didn't. So this year we're going to try it again. But we know we have to make an extra focus on ensuring the soil quality is where it needs to be. It has all of the nutrients that it needs. And I think we need to also be a little bit more diligent about watering it. I know earlier in the summer it was really wet, but it got drier, towards the end of the summer. And that might have been, where things started to fail. So those are the two things that we need to really focus on some more with the corn. But hopefully this is the year that we actually get our sweet corn. We did get some sweet corn this past year. I'm not going to say it was a complete failure. We did get some that we were able to enjoy, but it wasn't nearly to the extent that we had really hoped. So this is a new year, new opportunity to get it right. And then I would say lastly would be the potato harvest. Now, in the past, we've had a lot of success with potatoes, and we felt really confident about growing them. They're usually extremely easy to grow. I mean, back when we still lived in a townhouse and we had a little backyard, we were able to grow potatoes in raised beds there. And when we finally moved to the farm here, we've been able to obviously expand on that and would grow a ton of potatoes, enough to get us through an entire year. So I got into canning potatoes. We found ways to preserve them. We just had such an abundance in them. We were so blessed. So that was always done in raised beds. That's the way we've always had success with it. But then we decided to be a little adventurous, and we heard about this concept of growing them in a different type of raised bed, a different method that we also made a video on. But that method did not work the way we had thought, and that's completely our fault. We weren't as diligent with it as we should have been. We should have put more probably sand in there, because the soil needs to be nice and loose for potatoes in the way that we grew them. I don't think the soil was loose enough, and we were supposed to put a lot more straw in these beds that we made. So we did get some potatoes. We have enough to that I was able to can, and we have them on our shelves in our pantry, which is great, and we can still extend out the enjoyment and use of the potatoes, but it wasn't close to the type of harvest that we've gotten in the past. So I'm not sure. We might do both methods this year. We might still try this new method and just get better with it and just try to stay on top of it more, so that way we can see if it can be successful. But I think we might also grow some in the ground like we normally do, or in like the smaller raised beds like we have in the past. So that was a learning experience, but there's nothing wrong with trying new things. And you never know how it's going to work out. In this instance, it didn't really work out too well, but we're optimistic about how we'll be able to improve upon that in the future. Well, that is our journey of 2025 with a lot of the really great, exciting things that we're happy to share with you. But then also some of the not so exciting moments where we're a little bit more vulnerable and sharing those those stories with you too. But we do appreciate you taking your time and spending it with us. We hope you enjoyed this video, and we will see you on the next one.